Okay, here are my 10 secrets to success. Actually, it's only 9. It's 9. Yeah. Here are my secrets to success on the Dragon's Back, and for that matter, any multi-day ultra running event that you're doing, mountain ultra. So here we go. Okay, number 1 is to train for time on the feet. So this is advice I got from Marcus Scotney, not directly, we're not mates or anything. He won it in 2017, but so that's the dog. Yeah, so don't worry about, specific distances every time you're going out to train. Of course, you want to have a schedule and you want to keep to that schedule, but don't worry so much about the exact distance you're doing. Train for time on the feet. And the main reason is, if I use myself as an example, I'm not an ultra athlete, so this is advice for people who are fit and want to go and give this a go and think they've got a good chance of doing it. This is sort of general advice, but I finished the race in 62 hours, my accumulated time. If you think about it, there are 120 hours available to you over the 5 days in theory. Obviously, you get a cut-off if you don't come in after 11 at night. But 62 hours, that's literally just over 50% of my days spent moving. So you're constantly moving. You're not necessarily running the whole time, but you're always moving. So train for that type of continual, perpetual movement. I only stopped once a day, which was at the support point to fill up with water and energy and so on, energy supplements. And that's it. The rest of the time, you are drinking on the move, you're eating on the move, navigating on the move, everything. You don't stop. So just train for that and build up. And the advice from Marcus Scotney, which I followed, and it stood me in good stead, was train to be moving up. Your long runs, as it were, for this will be 4 to 6 hours of continual movement. Running and tabbing or fast walking. Looks like I don't have any eyes if I do that. Okay, tip 2 is train for mountain and hills, not just gym fit, okay, and that's sustained ascents and descents. What do I mean by that? So you can be as gym fit as you like, and you can try and spend as much time as you like on the stepper, on the treadmill, and an incline, whatever it is, but it doesn't train your body when you're going uphill, up mountains, and every step is at a slight angle, and you're testing your muscles and your tendons and your ligaments every single time. So you've got to be hill and mountain fit, not just gym fit. However, you do have to go to the gym, so you've got to include strength and core training in your overall program. So things like weighted lunges, weighted squats, all that sort of stuff. The cross training that a lot of runners I think neglect, but it's got to be in there because you've got to strengthen. You've got to have that foundation of strength in your core and in your lower half of your body. Okay, but the hill fitness is really important, and sadly that does mean for most of us we've got to travel, not necessarily to the hills of Wales. And I'll come on to that in a minute, but getting out to hills, and for me that was going to the Hampshire hills, which are pretty pathetic, to be honest. They're steep, and it just means you've got to up and down them the whole time. But you're training your body in the right way, so that, especially when you include poles, again a point I'll come on to in a minute, that whole body movement, and there's no getting around that, unfortunately. You've got to get out there. Okay, tip number 3 is sorting out your feet and your footwear. And again, might sound really obvious for a mountain ultra where you're spending a lot of time on your feet, but people take shortcuts, and they take shortcuts in terms of time and money, and for this it simply is not worth it. So what did I do? And this is months and months in advance. So the race is in May. The year before, you need to be going to a proper shop, a running shop, and getting your shoes fitted correctly. And that might be for your first pair of trainers, because you're going to wear those trainers out anyway during your training. You're going to cover so many miles, but then what you can then buy on the internet and you can then save money that way. But on your first pair, get them fitted properly, by a proper shop, and everyone's feet are different, and you might want quite thick absorbent soles for the rocks. So there are different. They can still have a 0 drop on them, but you might want a bit more padding. I personally went for only a 4mm drop and not much cushioning, and just purely because I train myself to run with more of a front foot on the balls of my feet sort of running style. But it just depends. Whoever you're, it depends on your running style, depends on the shape of your feet. But you've got to get that done properly, and then your feet in general as well. So through your training, you've got to work out where your hot spots are. You've got to look after your feet, and come the race, there is absolutely no way you can be getting any foot problems. There's no excuse for it. You can't afford to have any foot problems. You should have done all of that prep over the months before, worked out where your hot spots are, how to lace your shoes, and that's on the Dragon's Back website. And so you can do things like, as the race progresses, or the day later on in the day, if your foot starts to swell up, you've laced it correctly, so you can loosen up at the bottom to allow your toes and your feet to expand at the bottom, but you're still locked off at the top, so that your heel doesn't slip. All those sorts of things. And then the foot care as well. Again, took all the advice on the website, which is fantastic. And things like removing dead skin, and men aren't very good at this sort of thing. They don't like to do it. But taking off the dead skin with things like a pumice stone or a foot file as you're going along, so you don't have big lumps of dead skin on there that when they get wet, which they will do, even in the middle of summer, your feet are going to get wet on the Dragon's Back walking through the ground. You don't have big areas of dead skin that are going to cause you a lot of pain, and they will cause blisters as well. Yes, you've got to take with you the tape that they advise, so making sure that you've cut the tape to fit your toe, your heel, the balls of your feet, all those sorts of areas that they advise on the website. But I personally didn't need it at all. I didn't tape my feet, and I didn't have any blisters or issues at all, because done the prep, you've done the sort of dress rehearsals before and the weeks and months leading up to it, and you've got all your foot problems sorted way before. So there we go. Okay, number 4 is take your opportunities and apply a strict cost-benefit analysis. So what do I mean by that? Firstly, taking your opportunities. Every time there's a flat section, so I didn't run up any uphills, and to be honest, there were very few people that did, unless you're one of the top runners. If you're average person like me, you won't be running up them. You can't do that. So I was tabbing, walking very quickly up hills, and then any flats or downhills where possible, run them. But and that's to chip away at the time, okay? Because if you lose 30 seconds, and even if it's just certainly on certain days like day 3, there are lots of bits where it's up down, and in the second half of day 3, for example, you've just got to take your opportunities and you chip away at time. Any flats or downhills you've got to do, even if it's, some of them are only 50, 100 metres, but it all adds up, it accumulates. But you've got to apply a strict cost-benefit analysis. So for example, the first day and large parts of the second day, you're in very rocky terrain, and you can't run in certain parts, because it is literally like someone's got a massive bucket of rocks and they've just chucked it over the top of the mountain. So on the top of the glidders, there are large areas there, large parts where you can't run, because you're very easily going to trap your foot in between 2 rocks and snap your ankle, or tear a ligament at ankle or knee or tendon. So and I do know people, sadly, who at that point in the race, have torn ligaments, and that was it. That was their race over on day 1. So it's not worth it. If you can, if it's a track or a path and you think you can do it, then absolutely start chipping away at that time. But you've just got to weigh everything up. And also, in terms of cost-benefit analysis, you've got to stay within your limits. And as I said, the average fit person like me, you you just work out through your training, you know what pace you can go. And I didn't really look at the numbers too much. I recorded it all on Strava, you know, pace, heart rate and so on, and you know what calories I was burning. And that was of interest, and you can start to work out right, what should my heart rate be, what's the maximum my heart rate should ever be in order to avoid burning out. And then again, you have an idea of how many calories you're going to burn in a day, so you know how much nutrition to take, and you do need to work these things out. And that then tells you where your limits are. So for example, you know, I was making sure, I think my heart rate going up and any ascent, you know, I made sure it wouldn't go above about 145, and that's just me, and other people's will be different. And I knew then that I could sustain it for hours, as long as I fueled myself correctly. But you know, I could sustain that, and that was within my, you know, my sort of metabolic limits for my fitness. So you've got to understand these things, and that will allow you to then. It's a 5-day race, and so you've got to apply yourself with those limits in mind. Okay, tip number 5 is get poles and use them correctly. So the second one might sound a bit strange, but you wouldn't believe how many people don't use the poles correctly. Okay, so again, the top runners didn't have poles. Okay, well, the top men. Lisa Watson, who won the women's, she had poles, okay, and she overtook me going pretty quickly on poles. So it works, clearly. So I got Lecky carbon fibre poles, and they're ones where you could literally you could pop the little metal button, that would release it, and then it had a cable going through, so you could literally just fold up the sections and quickly chuck it in your back, and that was good. So easy to take out and use, and equally easy to put back in. So you didn't need to take your vest or your rucksack off. So nice and light. And to be honest, I wouldn't necessarily dismantle them. I would keep them if I knew I would be needing them on and off through the day. I would just keep them out, keep them extended, and I would just run with them on my side. And you can use that for a good bit of momentum, and that does help. Okay, using them correctly, I'm not going to demonstrate. I'm sure there are loads of videos on YouTube that will tell you will show you how to use poles. But it's things like when you're going uphill, putting them in front of you, angled, so that you're getting actual purchase. And so I've done a lot of ski touring, and those people who do a lot of cross-country skiing or ski touring will know what I'm talking about. You're using it for balance and also to take the pressure off your legs, and it becomes a full body movement. And you do have to train with poles for that reason, because you're using your triceps and your back muscles, and so you don't want to just be bringing them out on the day of the race and using those muscles for the first time. You want to be training those muscles, but it takes the pressure off the legs. And I remember immediately feeling it. You know, certainly even on day 5 going up the Black Mountain, you can it's almost like someone had come behind you and sort of was putting a chair behind you and literally lifting you up. It really does help, and you just feel. I certainly felt like I was sort of gliding up the hill a bit more when I was using the poles. And then on the downhill, I personally had bad knee problems, and I really needed them for the downhill. It was just inflamed knees, really sore, and I would at the end of the pole, I was literally. Okay, it had a slight glitch there. So at the end of the pole, I was literally putting my hand over the top, so I could literally put all my body weight, rather than holding it round on the normal handle, literally sort of palm of the hand right on the end, so I could really take the pressure off the knees. So yeah, take a look at how to use poles properly, because it is worth it. You do need to get the right technique, and it will save you energy and save your joints as well. Okay, 6 is do a dress rehearsal, and you need to be doing this at least 4 weeks before the event, and that's a 2 to 3 day session back to back, preferably of the route itself, and that's with all the gear you're going to use on the race itself, including your camp kit. Okay, and they're very strict. I'm not going to go into it here, but you've got to read the rules very carefully, because you're only allowed a certain capacity dry bag or 2 dry bags, as well as your your running vest or your running backpack, and it's hard to fit it all in. You know, I literally had to be elbowing my kit into the dry bag every morning just to get it in. So you've got to do a full dress rehearsal, and that's not just to train the body, but that's to train you for admin as well, to make sure you've got everything in the right place. You know, on your running vest, making sure that your footwear and your feet are good to go as well, and you're not going to get any issues there, because again, you can be race over on that front. And then your camp kit, you've got all the kit you need, you know, all the things like roll mat or thermarest, you know, all the tracksuit, whatever you want to change into in the evenings. Are you going to take a foam roller? Are you going to take a lacrosse ball or whatever it is for massaging and stretching in the evenings? Making sure you've got the correct nutrition, and that's packed away. So, you know, and practicing all of that admin. So that's got to be done with enough time prior to the race, so that you can then sort out all of those issues, any niggles, and you're good to go. Okay, we're getting there. Number 7 is recce the entire route. And the best way that most people do this is to break it down into weekends. So you're going to do a day of the race at a time, and that's split into a Saturday and a Sunday. So generally what I did, and the group I was with, we would travel up on the Friday night, most people from London, but others from elsewhere, and we would then do about 2/3. It depends on the geography. If there's a natural valley that you hit, an escape point, we would try and do 2/3 on the Saturday. Then on the Sunday, the remainder, because you know you're a little bit fatigued, but also you want to get back home to, you know, get ready for work and see friends and family on the Sunday evening. So that's generally how we did it. We started in late November, and to be honest, the weather was pretty poor, and going was slow, especially on the rocks, where you just have a film of ice, and the going gets really slow and tricky and dangerous, might cause an injury. But also the visibility was pretty poor. I personally wasn't able to get a huge amount out of it, with the clag in, and you couldn't really see more than, sometimes 20, 30 meters. So I wasn't getting a huge amount out of it, and it was also quite well before the race itself. If you've got time and the money, then absolutely do it twice. Do the recce's in the winter or the summer before, and then do them probably from March or April onwards, leading up to the race. And they double up as training anyway. So, you're doing back-to-back long days in the mountains, and it's the actual route itself. But the other thing as well is the navigation, and what that allows you to do. If you're doing it close enough to the race and you can memorise it all, you don't really need to. Certainly don't need to check your map that much. So, I was personally using my Sunto of Sunto Traverse. You download the GPX file, and they release that about a week or so before the race, the finalised route, and you can upload that to whatever device you want. You can then use the View Ranger app, and that is free with the basic mapping, but that was absolutely fine in my experience. You can pay a bit more and get the Ordnance Survey mapping, but I personally, I thought I'd save a bob or two there, but also the mapping was absolutely fine. That comes as standard with View Ranger, and you can upload the GPX file to that. So I had my Sunto, I had my phone, which you can put in a freezer bag and keep that waterproof if need be, and you can just quickly check that continually. Gives you crosshairs with your exact location on it. And then finally the map that they issue you, which is waterproofed, and that was my backup. Some people prefer a map. They just generally find it easy to look at rather than a phone. But because I'd recce'd the whole route within in 5-6 months of the race, I was more than happy. And you have to stop and check every now and then, but just avoiding those stops. A navigation check can take, if it's just a check to see where you are, 20-30 seconds. and that adds up. You know, it doesn't sound that much for a 315-kilometre race, but it's the cumulative effect of those stops. As I said, as I said earlier, just train to keep moving, eat, drink, map check, nav check on the move, and that will just save you time. Okay, number 8 is develop a nutrition plan that is suited to you. And I'm not going to go into it. You know, this has been talked about and covered very widely. You know, it's an endurance event. It's not rocket science. So what did I do? So the key things with nutrition really and fueling are things like rest, water, and food. The rest you need. That's why you need your camp admin to be down to a T, so that you can get enough downtime where you're lying horizontally and you're resting up. You need enough water. You need to hydrate from the day before. So a number of doctors have told me that when people have heat stroke or heat issues, it's often from the day before, and they haven't fully hydrated and recovered from that day, and it's the following day where it really kicks in. So make sure you start the day fueled, hydrated, ready to go, and then after that, as the advice we were given, is to drink to thirst after that. Water is probably the critical thing, because surprisingly there wasn't much water to pick up, certainly in the first couple of days. Up high, if it hasn't been raining and it was relatively dry in 2019, the streams the high up streams will dry up really quickly, and those are the streams which are less contaminated. If you're having to rely on streams further down in the valleys, that's where you're going to have much more livestock, and it's going to be contaminated. So carry some Puri tabs, so you can just drop them in. But the problem is they take at least 30 minutes to kill all of the bacteria. So you're not going to be able to drink that immediately. So you've got to have a pretty good water plan. Like I said, carry Steri tabs is probably one of the only sort of ways to get out. Otherwise, you're just going to have to carry more water, and obviously that's more weight. But so be it. In terms of food, again, not rocket science. It's plenty of carbohydrates. You've got to be ruthless about it. You've got to be constantly chipping away at the carbs. So whatever it is that you take, it could be gels, it could be jelly babies, whatever it is. So you're constantly topping up the blood glucose, and then the importance of protein as well. So depending on whether you're a meat eater or vegetarian or vegan will depend on what protein you take on board. But after 4 hours on an endurance event, you need to be taking protein because the body will then start to use things like your muscle reserves, and it's really important. You do have drinks out there, so you get there's a drink called 4-to-1, which has a mix of carbs and proteins. Personally, I'm a meat eater, so I was eating things like biltong, dried meat, cheese, stuff like that. It just depends. So you can obviously have beans and pulses as well, which are high in protein if you're a vegan. So have a look at that, and you've just got to have a plan, and you've got to know how much you've got to carry. You can leave food in the support bag for it's roughly halfway each day. And that's where they have water as well. But that's the only point during the course. Obviously, at the start and the finish, there's clearly water. But during the route itself, it's only the support points where they supply water. Otherwise, you've got to work it out yourself. Okay, the final one, number 9, is to perfect your camp administration, and by that I mean your administration in the camp, and to maximise your rest and recovery time. And I've already talked about it a little bit, but it really does. It allows you to provide to get the maximum rest and recovery ready for the next day. Like I said, this is multi-stage, multi-day ultra running, and you've got to be slick. Some people, they sort of sit around socialising and so on in the tent. There'll be time for that at the end. This is when you need to be you need to be getting in, having your recovery drink. I personally went and had a quick wash in the streams. There's a stream near to each campsite every night. I personally preferred that. It made me feel better, and I slept better. Depends on who you are. Getting into your sleeping clothes, stretching, massage rollers or lacrosse balls or hockey balls, that sort of thing. Getting that done and then getting into bed. Okay, and even if you're not sleeping, you're lying there and your body is starting to recover. Okay, so it really is important. Practice it. It may sound stupid, but wherever you are, practice, like I said, practice the packing. Ensure your packing list is down to a T. Ensure you can get it all into your dry bags, and then practice all of this routine. Certainly, if you're not used to camping, it really is important, and it'll get you to the end. And it's all about thinking to the finish. You've got to think to the finish, to Llandailo, making sure that you can get there in good order. Well, not feeling too bad anyway. And you can complete the race.